Carbohydrates are an extremely controversial and complex micronutrient that is so misunderstood around the world. This video is designed to first intricately explain what carbohydrates are, then how blood glucose levels tie into such, and finally discuss how low carbohydrate diets can be potentially beneficial for you in some circumstances. Sugar is the building block of all carbohydrates. Literally every single carbohydrate is made up of sugar, regardless of what type of carbohydrate it is. These are the two types of carbohydrates: simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, which I will share a picture of for you on screen. The first type of simple carbohydrate, the smallest type of simple carbohydrate in fact, is called a monosaccharide. Mono simply meaning one, and saccharide simply being the Greek word for sugar. As the name implies, a monosaccharide is simply one sugar molecule. Three main types of monosaccharides, so single sugar molecules, are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Makes sense, right? The other type of simple carbohydrate is called a disaccharide, which is two sugar molecules that have bonded together. Hence, they start with the name di instead of mono. Common examples of disaccharides include sucrose, which is glucose and fructose bonded together, also lactose, which is glucose and galactose bonded together, and maltose, which is glucose and glucose bonded together. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, are categorized into three main types: oligosaccharides, polysaccharides, and fiber. Oligosaccharides consist of short chains of sugar molecules, specifically 3 to 9 sugar molecules, which are linked together. These carbohydrates are found in foods like legumes, onions, and garlic, and play a role in feeding beneficial gut bacteria. Polysaccharides are longer chains of sugar molecules, specifically 10 or more sugar molecules that are bonded together. This category includes starch and glycogen, which I'll briefly discuss now. Starch, found in foods like potatoes, rice, and grains, serve as a plant's energy source. Glycogen, on the other hand, is the storage form of glucose in humans and animals. It's primarily stored in the liver and muscles for quick energy release when needed. The final type of complex carbohydrate is fiber. Fiber is unique because it's an indigestible carbohydrate and can be both an oligosaccharide and a polysaccharide. Unlike starch and glycogen, it passes through the digestive system mostly intact, supporting digestion and promoting gut health. Fiber is crucial for maintaining a healthy microbiome and can help regulate blood sugar levels and cholesterol. If this information feels like a lot, don't worry, re-watch this segment of the video if needed. I must assure you though that this information is fundamental to understanding carbs, as it is in fact the exact detail of what carbs actually are. I'm going to now assume you have grasped the concepts I have talked about and further discuss glucose. Glucose is by far the most important sugar molecule for the human body. If you aren't obtaining enough glucose in your diet, then your body literally produces it. That's how fundamental it is for your body. Glucose is an energy source, and by far the most preferred energy source for your body, so much so that any other sugar molecule or molecules that I've discussed in this video, for example, fructose, galactose, lactose, maltose, sucrose, starch, glycogen, they are all broken down and converted first into glucose to then be used as an energy source. The only exception to this rule is fiber, which, as I stated previously, cannot be broken down as humans lack the fundamental enzymes needed to break down fiber. Glucose can be either used as an energy source straight away or stored into your glycogen stores for later use. Or if in your glycogen stores they are full, these will be converted into triglycerides, so fat. Now I've illustrated the clear use that glucose has in the body, I'm going to further discuss and demystify fiber. Let's say a donut has 15 grams of sugar, with all 15 grams of sugar specifically being sucrose, aka table sugar. Let's also say an apple has 20 grams of sugar, with the 20 grams of sugar in an apple always being fructose, glucose, and fiber. Now, the apple has 5 grams more of sugar than the donut, yet the donut isn't considered as healthy as the apple. Why is this? Well, when you eat a donut, the sugar has been added into it, meaning it's refined sugar. An apple, on the other hand, has all of its sugar naturally occurring in it, and unlike the donut, apples contain fiber. Fiber slows the release of sugar into the bloodstream and therefore doesn't spike your blood sugar levels, unlike the donut, which has its sugar released into the bloodstream all at once due to containing no fiber. If you spike your blood sugar levels, your pancreas will crank out a ton of insulin to bring their levels down, and this can lead to a vast array of health issues like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, cancer, and so on. To clarify, refined sugar is obtained by extracting natural sugar from plants like sugar canes, sugar beets, or corn to then be put into your food. Natural sugar is sugar naturally occurring in food, for example fruit, vegetables, dairy, and etc. The process of digesting and metabolizing sugar in your body is essentially the same no matter what type of sugar it is, whether it's refined or natural sugar. However, refined sugar is absorbed much more quickly into your bloodstream due to the much greater lack of fiber, as previously mentioned. In theory, you could add refined fiber to a donut to slow the release of sugar into your bloodstream, but a donut is full of trans fats and has barely any micronutrients anyway, and so it's still unhealthy nonetheless. So, you can now see why fiber is fundamental in preventing a spike in your blood sugar levels, aka glucose levels. If you look at bread, for example, one of the main reasons why brown bread is emphasized to be healthier than white bread is because brown bread contains 2 to 3 times more dietary fiber than white bread. This is the reason why the glycemic index was devised, which simply tells a user how much power a food has to raise blood sugar levels. This, alongside the glycemic load, which tells the user the amount of carbohydrate in a food, can help diabetics and others trying to manage their blood sugar levels understand how much their blood sugar levels will be spiked. On a glycemic load, lower than 55 is considered low, between 55 and 70 is considered average, and above 70 is high. Similarly, on a glycemic load, lower than 10 is considered low, between 10 and 20 is considered average, and above 20 is considered high. A carrot on the glycemic index is 91, which is very high, but on a glycemic load, it is 1, which is extremely low. If the carrot had a glycemic load of 20, that would highly spike your blood glucose levels. But since the carrot has such a tiny glycemic load, it won't. As you could probably guess, both a high glycemic index and load is needed in a food to spike your blood sugar levels high. For example, like that donut that I talked about earlier. You may be wondering, how can I calculate how much something will spike my blood glucose levels if a food doesn't share its glycemic index or load? Well, this leads to one of my biggest qualms of the food industry in the UK, which is the mandatory nutrition label all food companies must share. This is what nutritious information food companies mandatorily have to share about their product. Companies are not enforced by law to share the glycemic index or load on their food in their label. Similarly, when you subtract the amount of sugar from the amount of carbohydrates in grams, for example, if a product has 100 grams of carbohydrates and 25 grams of sugar, the remaining 75 grams of carbohydrates can be any of the 3 complex carbohydrates, which remember is starch, glycogen, or fiber. If the remaining 75 grams of carbohydrate in the food product is literally just starch and or glycogen, well, Remember, both starch and glycogen are simply long chains of sugar molecules that are bonded together. And hence, if there isn't fibre in the food product, which remember companies aren't enforced to tell you whether there is fibre specifically or not in that food product, you could easily spike your blood sugar levels thinking that there is fibre in it, but there actually isn't. On a related note, the UK's mandatory nutrition label is also extremely dangerous because companies don't have to declare whether the remaining fats in their product that aren't saturated are either unsaturated or trans fat, with trans fat of course being extremely detrimental to human health. If you want a detailed video on this, I will link it in the description below. There's a few other things too, like for example what amino acids are actually present to quantify the quality of a protein in a company's food product, and what type of salt is being used in a product. Is it, for example, bleached table salt, or is it a healthy Himalayan salt? I want to briefly discuss one more topic related to blood sugar, aka glucose levels, before moving on, and it's about consuming high sugar food for exercise. If you're going to consume a high sugar food, do it after intense exercise, because after you exercise hard, your body is more efficient at using and circulating sugar. After intense exercise, your muscles are depleted of glycogen, which remember is the stored form of glucose in muscles. During and after exercise, the body's insulin sensitivity is heightened, meaning the muscles are more efficient at taking in glucose from the bloodstream to replenish glycogen stores. This means that even though consuming sugar can cause a spike in blood sugar, the body will use that sugar more efficiently for recovery rather than storing it as a fat or causing unnecessary fluctuations in blood glucose levels. Additionally, the spike in blood sugar after exercise is typically less harmful than at other times because insulin levels are more responsive and the body's immediate priority is recovery rather than fat storage. Therefore, consuming sugar post-exercise can aid in muscle recovery and help to restore energy levels without the same negative impact it might have when consumed at rest. Raw honey is a great example of what you could do this with. Raw honey is quite high in natural sugar while lacking fibre, but due to it being rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and literally being proven to raise testosterone, I supplement raw honey into my electrolyte drink that I drink during bouts of intense exercise. I'm going to finish this video discussing the controversial no carb and low carb diet. On a low carb diet, specifically one that lacks carbs completely, the body enters a state called ketosis. In ketosis, the liver breaks down fat in ketones, which becomes the primary fuel for the brain and body instead of glucose. I've looked online and found fascinating stories from those who have tried the diet, and I will link some in the description below. By far the most common benefit of the diet appears to be the reversal of so many of these health issues I've seen online that I truly recommend the viewer looking into the stories of individually. Other benefits include the loss of body weight, no more energy crashes from carb consumption, and an increased mental clarity with a lack of brain fog. It really does appear that the no carb or low carb diet can provide some positive effects for your body. But at the same time, many have reported it being so detrimental for their health. Hypoglycemia, for example, occurs when the body's sugar drops too low, and so it is common on the low/no carb diet. This condition is most commonly seen in people with diabetes who are taking insulin or certain medications that can lower blood sugar levels too much. However, it can also happen in healthy individuals that try the no/low carb diet. Symptoms of hypoglycemia include shakiness, dizziness, sweating, confusion or difficulty concentrating, fatigue, weakness, irritability, mood swings, hunger, even increased cortisol levels. If hypoglycemia is not corrected, it can become more severe and lead to confusion, unconsciousness, even seizures in some cases. Paul Saladino is an influencer who is a major promoter of the carnivore diet in the fitness industry. For years, he consumed a strictly meat and organ-only diet, but over time, many health issues arose for him, which he discussed on his YouTube channel. He states, and I quote, "I know a carnivore diet works for a lot of people, but I think there are a lot of us out there also that strictly eating meat or only eating meat and organs doesn't really cut it long term, because I think that for most people, carbohydrates are a valuable part of human physiology." Some of the other problems Saladino, a veteran of the carnivore diet, had included low testosterone, as carbs increase testosterone to some extent, increased cortisol, diabetes, insulin resistance, and thyroid issues. My personal analysis of the no/low carb diet is that when I'm older, I'll have more money to try the diet, since eating meat is expensive and also worsened health issues due to increased age. Therefore, sometime in the future when I want to experiment with how my body reacts to a carnivore diet and see what benefits arise from it, especially if I have any major health issues, I will try it. Right now though, it isn't worth it. Not just because it's expensive and I don't want to have health issues that could be potentially helped by switching to the carnivore diet, but because I don't want my testosterone to be low, nor do I want to lose weight. I of course don't want to have any of the other reported pitfalls like diabetes, increased cortisol, insulin sensitivity, thyroid issues, but also because I train MMA 3 hours on weekdays and I work as a swim teacher on weekends, which I think is fair to say requires more carbohydrates and replenishment of glycogen stores than the average person anyway. This is the end of the video, and I just want to quickly reiterate what I've said in previous videos, how you should aim to eat your calorie goal, whatever that is, whether you're in a caloric deficit or a caloric surplus, or you're just trying to maintain your body weight, and so you're eating at caloric maintenance. And on top of that, have your protein goal being hit. Your carbohydrate and fat goal, though, doesn't matter. As long as you're hitting your calories and your protein, the carbohydrates and fats that you consume truly doesn't matter. I've said this in my video on fats, and so yeah, I just want to quickly say that again. But yeah, with that said, this is the end of the video. If you have any questions in the description below, feel free to let me know. Not really a description, it's more the comment section, but yeah, that's the end. Thank you for watching. Yeah.